This is episode 46 with Jared Kleinert.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 46 today, and I'm super excited to be speaking to none other than Jared Kleinert. Now, in case you haven't heard of him, Jared is the co-author of 2 Billion Under 20, a TED speaker, and the founder of Kleinert Ventures, which is a marketing consulting firm helping leaders and companies market, recruit, and retain millennials. Jared was a team member at 15Five and Learnist and successfully started and failed at 2 startups as just a teenager. At 17 years old, Forbes named him the definition of social entrepreneur, and he's since appeared in Fast Company, TechCrunch, Business Insider, and the Huffington Post. Jared's real power lies in his ability to grow a powerful network, and he's even been called the most connected millennial in the world. His new book, 3 Billion Under 30, continues the theme of interviewing the world's most successful entrepreneurs, but this time focuses on slightly more established millennials. In this episode, you're going to learn why you should do more work than you're paid for, the biggest lessons learned from 2 failed startups, how to work for free when you have bills to pay, tips for connecting with your dream mentor, how to grow a vast, powerful network using super connectors, and the 3 biggest lessons learned from interviewing the world's most successful millennials. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/046. But for now, let's go hang out with Jared. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest. I'm speaking to Jared Kleinert. Jared, welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
Where are you in the world right now? I didn't even ask, where you're calling me from.
I am in a very sunny, hot Cape Town in South Africa right now.
I love Cape Town.
Yeah, I've actually seen that you've actually done some speaking gigs there. That's right.
I spent 20 days total in 2015 there. Do you know Dr. David Malapo? Is that a name in South Africa that rings a bell?
No, not for me.
So this guy, Dr. David Malapo, is maybe not like a Tony Robbins of South Africa, but he's close. And so by random means, he reached out to me last year and brought me to speak in Cape Town and Durban, all over the country on 2 10-day speaking tours. So that's how I got exposed to South Africa and got to see where you're living right now. Yeah, it was amazing.
Man, that's awesome. I'll have to look into getting him on the show, possibly.
Or Tony Robbins. Maybe you can get Tony on the show, too.
Yeah, And, if you're ever in South Africa again, it'll be cool to meet up. But before we get into sort of the networking stuff and contacts and that sort of thing, why don't you take us back to telling us a bit about who is Jared Kleinert and a bit about your quarter life journey?
Sure. So I'll start with the professional sounding bio first, and then I'll give you the more realistic picture. But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a TED and keynote speaker. I've done both TED and TEDx. I'm an award-winning author. I had a book come out in 2015 called 2 Billion Under 20, which brought together 75 stories from world-class millennials and shared their insights as to redefining success, breaking down barriers, changing the world. And I'm actually about to release my next one called 3 Billion Under 30, which is a similar model, but with older, more established millennials tackling much different lifestyle points, maybe a lot more, core life moments. And, in addition to the work I've done on a writing capacity, I've also been running a marketing consulting firm called Kleinert Ventures. So I've helped #1 New York Times bestselling authors, Fortune 500s, Olympians, and just a bunch of really cool people with product launches, with overall marketing strategy. But that I've been putting to the wayside as I prepare for the next book. But that's kind of the professional lens, on a personal lens, I am about to, at the time of recording, have my third straight birthday party where I'm having a gathering of friends on a rooftop bar in New York City, and then having chocolate chip pancakes at some point during the festivities as well. So I really like to hang out with friends, and there's no real line between personal and professional with me. What you hear is what you get, what you see is what you get, and a lot of my professional friends become personal friends and vice versa. I started becoming an entrepreneur at 15. There was 3 different people in my life that really shaped the course of my life, and one of those people was a seasoned entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. One of those was a former white-collar convict, and the third was someone who's been dead ever since I've been alive.
I love it. Now, when is your birthday, just by the way?
My birthday is October 16th.
All right, so you're gearing up for chocolate chip pancakes. Sounds good, man.
Chocolate chip pancakes all the way.
So, Jared, you said you sort of got into entrepreneurship at 15, and at 17, Forbes named you the definition of social entrepreneur. And you started 2 startups while you were a teenager. Talk us through those times. I know it says I think it's on your website that you spectacularly failed at 2 startups. Talk us through those times of starting businesses at such a young age.
Yeah, well, I'll go back to the 3 people who had a huge impact on my life, and I'll start with the second one first. But when I was 15, I started this site called nowigetit.com, which was supposed to allow you to get access to tutors from around the world via web chat. But what actually happened was I failed miserably in launching the company and made every single business mistake you can think of, from not having enough capital to not really figuring out what my customers would want. But by far the worst thing that I did was I picked a really poor mentor. And the person that I had as a mentor was someone my mom was dating at the time, which makes the story even funnier. But I found out maybe half a year or a year into hanging out with this person that he had spent time in prison for a securities fraud on Wall Street. And you would imagine, like, as a teenager, especially as someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, you learn very quickly that you need to associate with really high integrity people, and also people who know what they're talking about. Because not only did this guy lack the full integrity that I'd want to surround myself with as an entrepreneur, but he also didn't have the technical chops that I needed in a mentor. He didn't really know about ed tech. He didn't really know about startups, all that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. And so at 16, I'm sitting here with not only not any sort of network at all, but probably a deficit, because everyone I've hung out with has lacked in integrity. But the good thing about starting a business at 15 is you brainwash yourself with all the business publications and podcasts and things like that. So I was reading Forbes and Business Insider and all those different sites. And one day I came across an article in Forbes called "The Most Connected Man You Don't Know in Silicon Valley." And this is the second person that changed my life in my teenage years, which was this guy, David Hassel, who the article was about. And so I read this article. The article was all about how David threw these spectacular dinner parties in San Francisco, and everyone from Tim Ferriss to Warren Buffett's former pilot to professional soccer players, or football players, as you would say in South Africa. All these people would come to David's dinner parties. And not only was David really great at hosting events, but these people would actually forge amazing relationships out of David's events and out of his email introductions, things like that, to the point where companies were getting started because of David's introductions, or people were forming personal relationships out of it. And so I looked at that. I was like, that's the guy I want to be like. And the one thing that the former white-collar convict had given me, which was a gift, was he gave me the book Think and Grow Rich, and that led to me reading The Law of Success. Both were by Napoleon Hill. And so when I talk about the third person that impacted my life, it was, Napoleon Hill, who's been dead for decades. But I read, I read The Law of Success, which is by far my favorite book to this day. And there was a law about doing more work than paid for. So I reached out to David because I wanted him as a mentor. And I said, I'll work for you for free in exchange for your mentorship. And so I ended up working for his company for about a year unpaid before I got on payroll. And then I worked another year on payroll. And so by 18, I'd had what ended up becoming 2 unsuccessful startups, but I also worked for 2 VC-backed startups in Silicon Valley and was already beginning research on 2 billion under 20, given some of the connections I had made from meeting David.
So what would you say were like the biggest things that you learned from the failed businesses that you tried to start?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many mistakes that you make from every single attempt that you have at business creation or at anything entrepreneurial, even if it's not starting a business. And so it's hard to look back and say, I made these mistakes and that caused my failure. But there are lessons you can learn from any failures. And, like I said, the biggest lesson that I learned coming out of the first 2 poor attempts was that I needed to surround myself with better people. And so I went from having a non-competent, low-integrity mentor to having, highest integrity, extremely highly competent mentor. And not only did I ended up with David as a mentor, but over the next few years had dozens of mentors, all with different capabilities and competencies, as well as different networks that I could tap into as I grew my career. So that was probably the biggest learning lesson. I've learned a couple other things like having enough cash in order to get through a product launch and things like that. But I'm sure I'm going to make a gazillion more mistakes in the future. And it's really hard to peg a specific mistake to success or failure. But what you can try and do if you do, in fact, fail or have a mishap is to try and pull a lesson from it.
Now, something you mentioned was like have enough money, and you also touched on surrounding yourself with the right people. And one of the ways to do that is to work for someone for free, like you did. And I know Charlie Hone talks about this in like Recession Proof Graduate. But
because it fucking works.
Yeah, but now, what if there's people listening to this and saying like, well, how am I supposed to make enough money to pay my bills when I work for free? How do you balance those 2 things?
Sure. And I think the point that I'm trying to get at and that Charlie was trying to get at is you don't necessarily have to work for free forever, and you don't have to work for free for one person using all your time. And what I mean by that is with David, I was a teenager and I was in a position to work for a year unpaid because what I was getting back from that was way more valuable. I ended up doing the same thing to get my first ever marketing consulting client, which was Keith Ferrazzi. And Keith is a #1 New York Times bestselling author. But I only did free work for him for a month. And then that led to what it ended up becoming, I think, $25,000 to $30,000 over a few months of consulting work. And so that was only a month of free work while I was still getting paid at $15,500. And what Charlie would say and what he did was that you can work for free for just a few people. And you don't have to work for free for everyone, but you work for free for the right people and only for a certain amount of time, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. But you can also be collecting consulting gigs or freelancing gigs or making money on the side. Normally, if you're working for free for someone, you can set the terms as to how you handle that interaction. So you could say, hey, I can only give you 10 hours a week, or hey, I'll work remotely and these are the results I'm trying to get. So then you can engineer your time so you're only working when it's convenient for you. And then you just knock it out of the park. So you don't have to just work for free. It's working for free when you can afford to do so, so that you can accelerate your career faster than most people who don't want to put in that extra work.
Cool. And how would you recommend people like get in touch? Let's say someone's listening to this and they can offer a service to someone. How do they get in touch with those sort of big names that they're trying to get in front of?
So first, I get really clear about what it is exactly that you want out of an agreement or a conversation or a offer to do free work. So with Keith, I knew coming out of 15.5 that I wanted to continue building my skill of professional relationship building, given that I had worked with this guy who would become the most connected man you don't know in Silicon Valley, in David. I'm like, well, I'm getting really good at this, relationship building thing. I want to continue building that skill set. I also knew that I had a book of my own coming out in half a year to a year at that point in time. So I wanted to work with a successful author to see what the inside of a successful operation looked like. And so, third, I had a little bit of B2B experience because David's company was an enterprise software company. And so using all three of those factors, I reached out to Keith because he was the perfect fit to make a step forward that touched on all three of those things. He was a New York Times bestselling author 2 times over. He was the go-to guy for professional relationship building. And his firm, Frozzy Greenlight, works exclusively with Fortune 500 companies. And not that I ended up working with that firm, but that was what I got to look into just by naturally working with him. And so once I had all the thought laid out as to why I wanted to reach out to someone, then you can work to provide the most value to them and to come to them with a plan for doing more work than paid for. So I knew when I reached out to Keith that I could provide value in X, Y, and Z ways because I had really done a lot of work and a lot of thinking beforehand, before I ever typed a message to him on email. So really, whether it comes to reaching out to a mentor, whether it comes to taking a job versus starting a new company, even with who you date or who you have a long-term relationship with, at the end of the day, I just advocate being really conscious with those decisions because the more conscious you can be, the better results you're going to get.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. And Jared, I do want to really drill down on this sort of relationship building and connection stuff. But before I get further into that and your books, you gave a TEDx talk on why young people today hold more power than ever before. And I was wondering if you could share kind of the Cliff Notes version of that and why you think that is the case.
Sure. So there's actually a TED Talk, and that came out of the research I did for my first book, 2 Billion Under 20. So I was looking at 75 different examples of young people who had started companies, become Olympians, developed nuclear reactors in their garage at 17, like just people doing crazy, wacky shit at a young age. And I used them as a case study to figure out why this is possible for young people in the first place. Because, 2 generations prior, I'll give you, this is my favorite example. 2 generations ago or 3 generations ago, it took 3 governments, 7 years, 130,000 people, and $26 billion by today's standards to create what became the first atomic bomb. Whereas my friend Conrad Farnsworth, for $5,000 in his garage, built a nuclear reactor and became the first person in Wyoming to do so. And granted, like his nuclear reactor wasn't on the same level as an atomic bomb, but it's pretty close. And that's just like 70 years difference between all the resources and all the people it took to make the first innovation and what Conrad was able to do as a lone ranger with $5,000 and an online community of scientists to speak to and consult with. So there was a huge jump in the ability for young people to do things that had impact and things that made them money or made them grow. And I was looking at those trends, and one of them was the fact that we are more connected than ever before, which allows us to identify problems to solve faster than ever before. It also allows us to meet different people and gather research to solve those problems unlike ever before. Distribution is, another product of that connectedness. We're able to get our solutions out faster than ever before and on global scale. And all that leads to increased collaboration. I mean, my book series is really not possible maybe 20 years ago, because it would have taken me years and lots of money to fly around the world and somehow find the people that I was profiling. But because of the resources that we have, I was able to look them up online or get referrals to these people, send them emails or hop on a Skype call if it was international, or even a phone call. And I was able to get people to commit to a shared project that transcended 20 different languages or different geographic regions, hundreds of different industries, etc., because of the interconnectedness we have. And so there was different line items like that the talk overviews, and it was pretty fun. I think that like 8 minutes is a great guide to why young people should hold more power, or do hold more power than ever before. And if someone were to watch that, regardless of their age, I think they would be empowered to make the next year or the next 2 years as impactful as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll definitely link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, please do.
So just before I get onto the books, then I want to know, how do you? I mean, relationship building is something that I really enjoy doing, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it. Not to the extent that you've managed to achieve, but how do you go about growing such a vast, powerful network?
Sure. So another link you could put in your show notes is a 7,000 word blog post that I wrote about this. And it's at jaredkleinert.com/11 secrets. And that was 11 secrets to networking or something like that. I forgot the title, but the biggest secret by far, and it goes back to the consciousness around what you're doing and taking deliberate action, is to focus on building relationships with what I call super connectors. And if you focus on building relationships with super connectors, you're going to get the 80-20 of networking, or you're going to get the 595 of networking. And what I mean by that is I really focused a lot of my time on building a very solid relationship with someone like David Hassel, who is the guy I read about in Forbes. And by doing that, I was able to leverage the trust that he had with all of his network. So if I ever needed other introductions, I could ask David for those specific intros, and he would make those introductions on my behalf, allowing me to leverage years and years of hard work that he's put into developing relationships with the people that he's connecting me to. And that really starts off a relationship with me and that other person at a much higher level than if I reached out to that person cold, because I'm leveraging all of David's trust with that person and vice versa. And not only that, when you hang out with super connectors, even if you're not deliberately asking for an introduction, if you're at an event with them or you're working for them, they naturally tend to gravitate to other super connectors. So just by being in their presence, you're going to meet a lot of other amazing people who either have intricate networks themselves and or who are the most competent people at what they do. Mm-hmm. And so I just take this to heart, and I really focus almost all my time and even have planned my career strategy around meeting super connectors. And that by far has grown my network faster than any other mindset or any other focus out there.
All right, cool. I love it. So, Jared, I do want to shift now into the books. You wrote 2 Billion Under 20, which was the #1 entrepreneurship book of 2015. And now you're busy writing 3 Billion Under 30. Tell us why you decided to write these books, and some of your favorite stories that you've featured.
Yeah. So both books aim to unite the voice, influence, and expertise of world-class millennials so that we can entice other members of our generation to act on their passions, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's in athletics or the arts, and then unite everyone in solving the world's biggest and most pressing problems. And again, it goes back to the whole super connector notion. With a book like 3 Billion Under 30, I'm able to bring together 75 individuals ranging from the founder of WordPress to the 2-time defending fittest woman in the world, to the co-founder of Duolingo, New York Times bestselling authors, like all these amazing stories. And these 75 people collectively, from a sheer distribution and influence standpoint, have 35 million combined social media followers, over probably like 250,000 people on their email lists if you included all their followings. They are connected to hundreds of influencers in their industry or in their geographic location. And so with 75 stories, many of whom would not learn about one another unless there was some connecting agent like myself or like this brand, we can really impact people in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have been impacted. And so that's the coolest part about these books. And then you also get the fact that you have this mind share of individual stories, formative life experiences, and then also just practical takeaways for growing a business or for becoming mind strong, leading into a sporting event. There's principles and there's lessons to be learned from other industries and other cultures that we can read about and take into our own lives. And this like cross-pollination of ideas and this unity of subject matter expertise will not only be able to influence readers, but hopefully in the future could lead to collaborations that tackle some of the world's biggest and most pressing problems for our generation. So that's what's really exciting me about books like 2 Billion Under 20 and 3 Billion Under 30. And they lead to just really interesting connections after the fact. Like a reader will read this, they'll reach out to one of the contributors, and then something will happen, or two contributors will start working together on a company or on a shared campaign. It's just really interesting what happens as a result of the community that gets built out of a book like 3 Billion Under 30.
Yeah, I love the fact that there's a sort of a bigger purpose behind it to help and sort of ignite other people to do what they feel called to do and change the world in their small way. And it's kind of funny how you're kind of becoming like David Hassel now through connecting other people and other ventures launching from that. And another thing that I noticed on the 3 Billion Under 30 website is it says this isn't just a book, it's a connection to new friends you can find on Facebook and follow up with as you change your life alongside us. It's a community of like-minded people to learn from, so you can apply the practical ideas that jump off each page, thoughtfully crafted for you by people your age who are already doing it, which I think is really such a cool mission and project that you're putting together. And again, I'll definitely link that all in the show notes. But Jared, what would you say are sort of the 3 biggest lessons you've learned in business or life from the people that you've studied or met?
Yeah, I would say the 3, and we're a few months out from book launch. I'm still kind of figuring out what's going to resonate with most people. But the 3 biggest storylines that I'm seeing coming out of 3 Billion Under 30 is that distribution for ideas has become so democratized. And what I mean by that is if you have a product like 3 Billion Under 30, there's multiple ways to market that and to share those ideas. And the way you're going to have the most success is if you actually break down that big message, or you break down that product into dozens, if not hundreds, of different niches and ways that someone can get value from that work. So as we're promoting the book, there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds, of unique landing pages selling the fact that you can learn X, Y, and Z from this specific contributor. there'll also be niches where we promote the different lessons you can learn from a certain industry or from a certain type of story. So we have like 5 different parts to the book where it's like start, risk, journey, learn, and succeed, which we find to be 5 stages of finding and acting on your passions in life. When I'm distributing this book, I can talk about, here are 10 different people talking about the struggles along their journey, just as easily as I can talk about, here's 3 lessons you'll learn from the co-founder of Elite Daily. And then I can talk about the book as a whole. But by breaking down your gigantic message, or whether it's business or whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's a book like 3 Billion Under 30, by being able to break down your message into as many niches as possible, you're going to be able to speak to the people who care about those niches. And because we're so democratized in how we're speaking to people, because you have podcasts that all have a certain amount of followers, you have YouTube channels that have been built up, you have email lists, like there's a gazillion ways to talk to people now. And that's what I mean by democratization. If you're able to niche your message and speak to people, really effectively where they care about you or where they care about a certain cause, then you'll have a better opportunity to share your story and to share what you're working on. And we've seen this with some of the book contributors who have become YouTube stars and built 3.5 million people subscriber bases, or they've become major TV personalities, or they've built their own media companies. They've in fact taken sharing their story into their own hands, and they've built their own distribution channels because they can't rely on anyone else to share their story. So distribution is becoming democratized, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But it's a good thing if you take action in controlling your own distribution channels, or in partnering with as many people who own distribution channels as possible, like we are for 3 Billion Under 30. So that's a really big thing. 2 is that the ability to have exponential impact and success is very possible. And you see a lot of people who in the last 3 years have gone from someone who's regular or someone who's ambitious to someone who's completely dominating their industry, or completely, taking over the world and running a near $1 billion company. And the reason that upward mobility is possible is because while distribution is also becoming democratized, so is the ability to be on top of a hierarchy in your niche, right? So you can become the de facto expert in a certain niche category, but also there's all these different industries and all these different worlds that are just popping up. So like the co-founder of Upload VR, who's in our book, VR wasn't that popular a few years ago, but because he got on that train early and became the go-to expert, he went from a regular entrepreneur to someone who has one of the hottest companies in Silicon Valley, and is the go-to destination for news about VR, AR, and things like that. So you can very quickly become a leader in your industry, or the go-to person for a matter of, or for subject matter expertise, but you got to obviously put in the work and, look at trends, things like that, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's very possible. And that possibility hasn't really been there before. It used to be the American dream, and maybe it still is, that you have that upward mobility, but now we're just taking it online into an entrepreneurial world, regardless of where you're from, or mostly regardless of where you're from. Unfortunately, there's still areas in the world where that upward mobility is tough, but it's becoming more and more democratized, and more opportunities are spreading out. So that's a few of the storylines coming in from the book, and then just like a macro storyline as far as managing the book launch has been the ability to collaborate with people and keep costs down, and also just imagine what you can do with little resources and have huge impact. So with the book, we've had 75 contributors share essentially like a blog post worth of content, 3 to 5 pages of a formative life experience mixed with practical takeaways for the readers, But we've also had like 25 to 30 people who have introduced me to some of those contributors. And those people range from like the founder of Zappos, the CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, to Seth Godin, or to Adam Braun from Pencils of Promise. And all that took was an email, whether I knew these people or not. And they responded with an introduction or a reference. And suddenly I have over 100 people working on this project with me. And yet the only couple people that are on payroll, at least for creating the book, was myself and a virtual assistant. I mean, now that I'm running into the book launch, I have a couple other people who are being paid to help me. But I had 100+ people working on this mission, and yet only 2 were getting paid. So it's really amazing to see what you can do when you focus on collaboration and you provide value in other ways.
Yeah.
And then the impact of that, I'm hoping to sell 100,000 books, which sounds ambitious, but when you have 35 million combined social media followers and 250,000 combined email list subscribers, like, it's not out of the question. So with 2 people on payroll, you might have something like a $2.5 to $3 billion product launch. And I don't think that level of collaboration or that level of logistics was possible 10 or 20 years ago. And yet what I'm doing is chump change compared to what a lot of people are doing in terms of nonprofit work and getting millions of people around a cause like Black Lives Matter, or even the TED organization, and being able to license out their work to everyone with TEDx licenses. I mean, they have a very small group that's just impacting hundreds of millions of people. And that's just a really cool factor in terms of how we can impact people moving forward.
Yeah. Jared, I do want to be mindful of the time. But I want to go through some sort of rapid fire questions at the end here. So just the first thing that pops into your head, and sort of a one-line answer.
Sure.
The first one is, what do you wish you'd been told early in your 20s?
What do I wish I was told earlier in my 20s? Well, I'm turning 21, so I'm still in my early 20s. But
yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know. So. What do you wish I should know?
Well, from this interview already, I think one of the big things is that you don't have to sort of have a big paying job, and you can work for free, without sort of putting yourself out.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is, what's the greatest opportunity for quarter lifers today?
Greatest opportunity, probably digital nomadism. You can work from almost anywhere in the world if you have Wi-Fi, and you structure your work and lifestyle around being able to be mobile. And that is only going to increase. So we're going to have faster and faster internet connections. We're going to have cheaper and cheaper flights. The government and the ability to be as mobile as possible is going to be accommodated for as more and more people do it. So things like taxes, which are weird right now for digital nomads, or visas and things like that, that'll all become more and more accommodating. It'll become more socially acceptable. We'll also probably have things like VR that allow us to have more authentic experiences. So digital nomadism is on the rise, and it's a huge opportunity to do things like work for free because you can lower your expenses, or to have the lifestyle freedom you want. And it doesn't mean hopping on flights like every week, but it might just mean being able to spend more time with friends and family, or to build a side business that may one day become your full-time business. Digital nomadism provides a lot of those opportunities, and I think it's only growing.
Yeah, I love that you made that distinction, because when people say, like, I'm location indie or I'm a digital nomad, the first thing that comes to mind is that you work from your laptop on a beach all the time. But it can just, like, if you break it down, location independent, it just means you don't have to be in a certain place to make money. So I'm glad you made that distinction. Jared, I have one more question, but before I get to that, is there anything else you want to mention? And also, if people are wanting to get in touch with you and find out more about 3 Billion Under 30 and the rest of the work you do, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so just Jared at 3billionunder30.com or 3billionunder30.com. You can find out everything about the book. More than happy to take questions and provide answers. Although I'm not Gary Vee, I can try my best. Yeah, that'd be the two places to go, but would love to hear from everyone. In fact, I go on a lot of podcasts and don't always get emails or don't always get messages from listeners. So if you've listened this far, I would love to hear from you, even if it's just a quick hi or a funny dog video or something.
Cool. Yeah, and hopefully we can make a small dent in the 100,000 copies.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, Jared, I've got one more question. Before I get to that, I just want to acknowledge you for coming on today and sharing a bit about your story and your wisdom in terms of growing a network of super connectors and all the other great stuff you shared, and for kind of driving this mission to help people kind of see what it is that sets them alight, and doing that so that we can all sort of together, it sounds really cheesy, but sort of change the world and make a difference. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. And the final question that I have is, what one thing can listeners do this week to start creating their own quarter life comeback?
Take a minute or two, and by a minute or two, I mean a few hours, to be deliberate about what you want in life and what the next steps you need to take in order to get that are. And I'm not saying you need like a 10-year plan, but even if you have a deliberate plan of action for the next 3 months, I think you're going to head in a much farther spot than most, or than you did previously. Mm-hmm. So, I know pretty much what I'm doing for the next 90 days, and I have a general idea of what I want to be doing in 10 years or 20 years, but I'm also learning how to take deliberate action and to set my career up in a certain way. And part of that deliberacy can be increasing optionality. So by adding more super connectors to your network, you increase the optionality of people that you can connect with, should you ever need it. So becoming location independent increases your optionality, making sure that your finances are taken care of and that you have a steady income stream or have 2 or 3 income streams helps you have more optionality. So increasing optionality on a purposeful note is deliberacy too. But you need to have some sort of deliberacy about your life, some sort of consciousness around the major life decisions you make and where you want to go, because otherwise you're not going to go in any real productive way, or if you do, it's going to be by accident, rather than taking habitual steps towards making it possible.
I love it. Jared Kleinert, thank you so much for coming on the Quarter Life Comeback.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So there you have it, guys and girls. That wraps up this week's episode of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast. And a big thanks again to Jared for coming on the show today and sharing so much wisdom. Super crazy that at such a young age he's doing so much in the world. And big thanks once again. If you like this one and know someone who'll benefit from it, please share it on social media and shoot me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know your biggest takeaway. For me, it was the idea of working for free for people who you love to get in touch with and add to your network as a mentor. And it doesn't have to be your full-time job. So just offer whatever work you can for free, and things will kind of grow from there. It's a topic I'm really keen on and interested in exploring in future episodes. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in the show at briantier.com/046. And if you want to get more episodes like this one, make sure you go subscribe at quarterlifecomeback.com. Thanks once again for joining me this week, and until next time, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.